and welcome to another Warcraft 3 audio commentary. This is going to be a crazy game, a 4v4 random team game, where 3 of my allies leave right at the beginning of the game. This is going to be one of those sort of challenges that you can put to yourself if you really so desire, and that is winning a game in 4v4 random team just by yourself. And so yeah, in this game I'm going to be the purple player. And before I kick this off, let me go ahead and get it set the stage with some sick music from my friend Jake. And he calls this little tune Daddy's Home. So here we go. Alrighty, so that really gets it amped up here, like kind of like a intro for a wrestling match or something like that. So at any rate, I'm going to be the undead player here. I've got 1 human and 2 orc allies. I've spawned on the left side. The map is Golems in the Mist. This means that there will be no neutral merchant shop. There's no tavern. There's a couple of goblin laboratories on both sides of the map. And yeah, so I'm up against an orc, a human, another human, and an undead. So, you know, they're not going to have elf units to sort of play with, but other than that, you know, pretty solid racial combination for these teams. One of their players leaves, which gives me a little bit of a sort of, I don't know, a little bit of an advantage that he's left, I guess. That really depends on how good and bad he was, but generally, you know, losing players on your team is a bad thing. So anyway, one of the things you have to when you're trying to solo in a 4s game when all your allies left is depending on when they left, you might have to sort of do their opening build order and get everything set up to where you can, without too much effort, sort of amass units at all of their bases. And the reasoning for this is any sort of delay could just lose you the game immediately. If they rush, you notice that right at this moment, Orange doesn't have any kind of towers. You know, I don't have a tower on my main base quite yet. And I'm going to be going for a Dreadlord with Fiends, which looks a little bit bizarre. But the reason for the Dreadlord is I want to get Vampiric Aura to go with these Grunts and Footmen that I plan on building. Also, the Tauren Chieftain and the Blade Master, along with the Paladin and the Dreadlord, will all benefit from Vampiric Aura. So, hopefully, not to mention the skeletons from Rotted Necromancy. So hopefully that's going to be useful. And yeah, so I've sort of tipped my hand here. I plan on getting a bunch of melee units. I'm getting 3 Aura heroes and a Blade Master, since Orc doesn't have a, it only has the 1 Aura hero. So the Blade Master is going to be getting in a lot of damage, as well as getting the benefit of the Vampiric Aura. So anyway, you see red's trying to tower. We've got green over here, Blade Master harassing. And this is really a good strategy. They've sort of distracted me, and it takes me a few seconds, you know. I think he doesn't quite kill a peon there, but he gets a lot of damage in on a peon before I even realize what's going on, and he might end up killing this one. But yeah, so this is sort of one kind of strategy that is pretty effective when you're facing one player generally. In terms of coordination, you know, I can sort of, you know, pick whatever kind of strategy I want to do. If I want to do a rush, I can, you know, get everybody's base sort of set up to do that. I don't have to, like, communicate with anybody. And so in that sense, it can be useful. Like, I can get everybody, or all the bases, not everybody, but it's just me. But I can get all the bases on the same page and, you know, go for one particular strategy. But the problem is my attention is pretty limited as a single player. So, you know, noticing like yellow coming down here and hitting these burrows, normally it wouldn't be a big deal. He's only got 2 fiends, and I've got grunts and, you know, plenty of burrows, plenty of peons there. But the problem is, you know, it takes me a second to notice all these things, especially when I'm like dealing with a Blade Master harass. I've got a guy up here trying to tower me. Red looks like he's, I don't know if he got Blizzard or Water Elemental, but I think he got Blizzard. But anyway, everybody, you know, everybody's, you know, they're poking around and doing this and that, and in the meantime, I'm still needing to be producing units. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up 3 barracks at all the bases. But you notice if you look at the team resources, you know, Orange, you know, he's approaching 1,000 gold. You know, the food count, you know, it's not being, I'm not taking full advantage of the supply. Teal, you know, he's over 200 gold. Pink, you know, 600. And even me at my, you know, at my resources and base, I'm approaching 1,000 gold here. So my macro is sort of suffering when I'm trying, you know, in a normal game situation, you know, obviously you're trying to balance micro and macro to some degree, but it's just way more of both when you're trying to control 4 different bases, 4 different armies potentially. Ideally, you want to get a pitched battle where all your armies are together, all their armies are together, so you can be seeing everything that you need to be seeing, you know, at a particular moment. Because if they split attack, you know, you're going to have to be going back and forth between this base, that base, maybe your army somewhere else. You know, maybe they're getting expansion. You know, in terms of scouting, I haven't even been on their side of the map. Well, there's a teal grunt over here, but pretty much done no scouting. I don't know, you know, very much of anything about, like, if they've got a player teching. I don't know that, you know, much at all about, you know, their tech progress, you know, if they've crept anything. I sort of suspect that they haven't been creeping, at least some of the players, because, you know, yellow pushed, red's been, you know, trying to tower and push and all this stuff. So I sort of hope and assume that they haven't expanded yet, but I don't technically know that. It's very possible they could have did that in the, you know, sort of moments before they attacked and all this stuff. So again, ideally, also what you could try to do is get a couple of towers at every base, just to make sure, you know, if one player goes rogue and tries to, you know, sneak down here and hit teal, you know, you can have some towers waiting for him just to slow him down enough to where, you know, if it takes you a second or two before you realize that, the base isn't going to lose too much. Like, you know, maybe you lose 1 burrow or 1 tower or something like that, but, you know, in the meantime, the towers are going to be sort of taking shots at them as well. So certain bases, certain races are more susceptible to this sort of play style. Burrows are pretty easy to kill, but again, you know, sort of unrepaired, all the races, or unmicroed and unprepared, you know, all the races are going to be sort of vulnerable to attacks at certain points. So you notice they killed this burrow. I haven't even reacted yet with Teal's army, and I'm like, oh, you know, I'm reacting. He's already lost 2 burrows before I react. So, you know, so this is not great. We've got blue and yellow coming down here. Luckily, I can get these armies into position here. I'm pretty close, so I don't have to burn a TP to do this. And I can go ahead and defend here before Teal loses any more at his base. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm just getting really frustrated. But, you know, obviously, it's not going to help me really much to say anything or in the chat, or, you know, really try to worry, you know, about the anger. You just try to, if you're really trying to win, you know, you just got to just take your losses sometimes and you know, look forward to, like, what can I do to sort of minimize this. And so I'm going to try to get some towers up here. I think I built some towers at Pink's base. I've already got 1 arcane tower at Orange's base. And so yeah, but I'm still, you know, pretty low level in these heroes. Level 1 with the Torn Chieftain, the Paladin. The Blade Master and the Dreadlord are level 2, so that's pretty useful. But again, right now I still really don't know what I might be up against. So, you know, red could be doing anything from, like, casters, or like he is doing, going to tier 3 for griffins. Blue, same deal. He could be getting casters. Yellow could be going straight for worms. He could be going for necromancers, which would probably be tough for me to push necromancers back. the only sort of hope I would have is that I would have a big enough army to sort of beat the regular units and then, you know, just roll over the necromancers. But, you know, if we were to get a bunch of necromancers and sneak them up to my base, you know, purple, my main base, then, you know, I'd have to town portal. He could just run and really do a number with the skeletons and stuff like that. So, but now this is the point where I really need to be attacking here. I probably should just tower my main base and let this go, because it really doesn't have that many units. Now when green comes up, it changes the sort of dynamics just a bit. But if you look at the resource count, you know, orange almost has 2,000 golds. I've been doing a bad job of macroing him. Pink has 1,000. Teal I'm doing a little better job on, I guess you could say, but he really doesn't. Even teal, you know, I'm not really totally up to 50 food. I'm only at 33 food, so nobody is quite to 50 food except now orange is getting there, but in my base actually is getting there. But you know, in theory, if they were a little bit better players and a little bit more coordinated, they probably could have done better. I think they lost actually at some point. Blue left the game as well, so that sort of helped me out. But because they've got to, you know, now they've got to sort of take on the responsibility of controlling blue and everything. So anyway, green's going to end up losing a bunch of units here. Sort of a big mistake on his part. They should have, you know, this hit and run play style, it works really well if you don't lose units on the attacks. But if you do start losing a bunch of units, as you see he's losing a bunch of grunts here, then that's going to be really bad news for you. Now again, I've got a bunch of units sitting here. I don't know exactly how these units got in the middle of the map right here. I think I had rallied them there because they were pushing on green, so I was like, oh, trying to rally. The other point is when you do this strategy, due to the mechanics of Warcraft 3, you cannot rally allied buildings on like the wrong heroes or units or whatever. Like if I try to rally my crypts onto, say, Teal's Tauren, the rally point is going to go wherever the Tauren was at that particular moment, but it's not going to follow, it's not going to attach to the Tauren chieftain. So, you know, as soon as you move that Tauren chieftain somewhere else, like you move your armies, that rally point is going to stick, you know, wherever you set it sort of immediately. So this is going to be a pretty good battle for me. You know, they really didn't have the advantage there with all these auras and all the armies together. You know, that was a pretty easy fight for me. And again, melee units against fiends. Generally, the melee units are in a decent position. They, you know, the armor damage type sort of favors them. I've got some. I dropped a sentry ward there, I think. Yeah, so that's going to sort of be useful to see if they're going to come attack the bottom. I leave these items, unfortunately, just an oversight. Trying to throw up an expansion here, but you need to be aware at a certain point. Just generally playing in 4s, air units are a pretty big threat that you need to at some point account for, and especially in 4v4. Ideally, I would have had like some bat riders or gargoyles or something ready, potentially gargoyles, ready to respond in case like mass griffins or something showed up. You know, have some fiends sitting, you know, at a base where they're most likely to go. But the problem is, and again, towers sort of do this function, but towers are heavy armor, so they don't really, like, mass griffins pretty much are going to roll through, like, burrows and towers if I don't have the fortified upgrade, which I'm nowhere near getting. So that's sort of a thing you should probably prioritize. It was just the fact that their early pressure sort of slowed me down with the orcs. And again, it's just, there's no real excuse. I had plenty of resources to do it, like to get up, teched up, and get those upgrades. But it's just, my attention was limited, and I just end up, you know, trying to focus on the early game, and, you know, sort of made the mistake there of not being prepared for these griffins that are going to sneak over and sort of really hammer me. Though the problem with that is me pushing right now is a decent time to push, because he wants to go attack with them, but if he sends all these griffins to attack, that means he's not going to be able to defend, you know, whichever base I end up pressing. The problem is, though, the air units are going to be obviously can fly over obstacles and everything, so they're going to get there pretty quick. And the other problem is, due to my sort of not great macro in this situation, you know, I've got 3,000 gold with pink, 2700 with orange, 1300 with teal, 1200 with my actual base. I could have had way more units at this point. I probably should have. Way more upgrades, a better, I could have had some support units like casters, statues, uh, you know, second heroes, all these things, if it's just normal situation where I was just controlling my army, at this point in the game, I most likely would have probably been either had some frostworms or soon to have some frostworms. But as it stands, I don't. Red's going to roll into pink space and knock out all the burrows, which you might say, well, you weren't really macroing very well anyway, so it wasn't that big of a deal that you lost those burrows, but it still is really annoying. I have to deal with that, or he's going to lose his economy as well. So Red makes a huge mistake, though, and ends up getting all of his Griffin's web. Well, not all of them, but all but 2. So that really sort of extinguished the huge threat that I was facing with those Griffins. He can still be annoying with these 2, which he is going to be. I called to arms because, it gives them 4 armor instead of 0 armor, so I thought that would be a good idea. But at any rate, I want to go ahead and throw some watchtowers up at pink, try to get things back on track. You see that red is going to continue to poke around and try to be annoying. Green is going to sort of go on the offensive here. But it's not terrible. But what red did actually is buy time for yellow to get worms, buy time for them to start using blue more effectively. And yeah, so it looks like blue's going to be going for knights, or whoever's controlling him. Looks like green is going to be getting raiders. Green's got an expansion, so. And again, we've got these griffins with 2 attack upgrades are just going bananas in the base over there. So. That's really annoying, and it's a really good decision on Red's part. Now he didn't micro it well, obviously as well as he could have. So, it could have been a way bigger problem if he wouldn't have lost those Griffins there when I town portaled. He had plenty of time to get away, come over to Orange base, do a bunch of damage there. Maybe go back over to Teal's base, do some damage there, and keep his army intact. But he didn't do that, so it gives me a little bit of a chance here to sort of swing. And again, here's sort of this paladin. I need to get the paladin with the army, and somehow he ended up blocked over there. So, but yeah, this is this is looking better for me now that I've sort of taken out a lot of those Griffins. But red still is going to continue to make them and still try to be annoying with them. So what I really need to do is take advantage of this moment where he doesn't quite have the ability to pressure me like he did a minute ago. Now I end up losing the Dreadlord. That was just a terrible micro deal. When trying to get everything into position with these amount of units is really, really annoying because due to Warcraft's mechanics, you can only have 12 things in a control group at a time. So as soon as you get past 12 units, you've got to make another control group. If you get past 24 units, you've got to make a third control group, etc., etc. And also, one little tip here, if you didn't know or if you don't do it, is you can control group buildings, which a lot of times can be a useful idea in terms of helping you macro easier. Like you can, put all your buildings in control group 3, 4, 5, 0, any of the numbers you want. Generally, unit control groups are going to be 1 through 3. And a lot of players will either use 5 or 0, maybe for their buildings, or 4 or whatever, but, and generally leave the first 3 open for like units, heroes, etc. But anyway, that's, a thing you should probably try to do, especially in a 1v4, is get everybody's production buildings on a control group. So when you're in battle, you can get the control group, tab to whichever of the production buildings you want to use. Most likely you're going to be using all of them sort of in and out there. So you can go for the one control. Go for the one set of production buildings. Build riflemen, footmen, knights, whatever whatever you're going to get. The next one go fiends, the next one get grunts or headhunters or whatever, whatever your buildings are, you know, you just tab through there and do it pretty quick, especially if you know the hotkeys. It helps even more to be able to do that. You notice Red's once again got a big army of Griffins. He's got 3 attack overraids now, and he's being just a huge problem here. And I should have been better prepared for this. I should have just gotten some Griffin. I mean, not some Griffins, but some Bat Riders, some Gargoyles, something like that. And I'm building Bat Riders, but for some reason I don't exactly know. I don't think I concoct any of these Bat Riders. I don't know where they end up going. Actually, I'm trying to pay attention here and see what happens to them. So I rally them here, and yeah, I don't know. My reaction was pretty slow, and somehow they just end up dying at some point. So, but anyway, I'm going to be pushing on Green's expansion here. I'm going to once again micro poorly lose the Dreadlord immediately. That's a pretty big loss, actually. You definitely, the other problem in this scenario, and the other tactic, if you're on the other side of it, is go for heroes. The other team, you know, since the macro and the micro is sort of the weak point of the single player in these types of situations, sort of focusing heroes at certain moments can really be a big problem for the single player, because a lot of times their reaction, you know, they're sort of their attention is divided between, you know, 4 different heroes. So keeping track of them, you know, might be a little bit they might be a little bit slower than they otherwise would reaction time wise. And then, you know, as the undead hero, I can't holy light him, so I didn't have any real healing for him. So if you can snipe off a hero or force a town portal, you can really mess somebody up. And you notice that Red is doing a great job harassing with these Griffins. The bad news is, like I say, if he's doing that, it leaves his allies open to attack. But again, obviously he's doing tons of that. They could just let this expansion go. If they would have did that and let Red do his thing. You notice I've got all these Bat Riders sitting here, and I have no idea. I've got these Bat Riders up here. I could have really taken a chunk out of these Griffins, but you know, like I say, my attention is just sort of strained between all these bases. You know, I've got 3,000 gold, nearly at all my allies. Plenty of wood to utilize and stuff, so it's like, you know, trying to get these bases back on track, trying to do all this stuff, and it's total oversight here, not seeing these Bat Riders. I thought I looked back there and I didn't see them, and I was like, well, I guess they just died. So anyway, maybe at some point I notice them. We'll see if I ever do. Yeah, how I miss those Bat Riders is really baffling, but yeah, I just totally miss them. And but I pretty much crushed the rest of the team's army, and I do have this expansion going up. And my army should be, if I ever happen to run into these Griffins, I'm gonna just totally smash them. So I've got plenty of fiends. My heroes are just insane. Level 6 on the Blade Master, 6 on the Tauren, 4 on the Dreadlord, and 6 on the Paladin. So I'm like, my heroes are just sort of like super powered. So, you know, and their heroes are only like level 3. You know, I don't even know if Red has his hero back yet. It doesn't even look like he does. So, yeah, so he doesn't, and he was only level 2. So yeah, you know, that's pretty much gonna calm down. He could stay around and try to be annoying, but you know, killing base race wise, I'm gonna just beat him because, you know, I've got more units. I've got all these crazy heroes, level 3 Shockwave, all that stuff. So, and magic damage isn't great in a base race, but anyway, this is gonna be sort of the end here of this game. You know, he makes a good point, and this game sort of showcased a lot of moments where they were, you know, doing the right things. They didn't execute it perfectly, though. Obviously, they made plenty of mistakes, and they ended up losing one of their players as well. He left, so yeah, this score is going to be all over the place because, you know, Orange got plenty of a unit kill. He got the most unit kills, actually, it looks like, which is crazy considering A, he was a Paladin first, and B, he wasn't even in the game. So, but yeah, and then I got 41 unit kills, so I was sort of right behind him in terms of that. I had the rifles and the fiends were the range damage portion of our army, so sort of to be expected generally, but yeah, you notice red killed tons of buildings. But anyway, this is sort of showcased a lot of different ways from both sides of the of this type of game. That were good ideas. It was a good idea for red to go for those griffins and push those orc bases. It's one of the big things in any team game, but fours especially, is finding a weak point and sort of knocking a player out if you can, whenever you can. Now, again, you have to analyze what's going to be the cost of this. Am I gonna leave my teammates vulnerable and lose one of my allies in the meantime? But if they would have played correctly, red could have did all that damage and they wouldn't have. They didn't have to lose anything really. They could have sort of just held. They could have held his base while he did all that damage. And then when I town portaled, he needed to fly those griffins away. So that was another problem for him. But again, split attacks really annoying to deal with. You can go for a more early game focused strategy with certain heroes that go well together in the other game, like Blade Master, Demon Hunter, Keeper of the Grove, Priestess of the Moon, Death Knight, Fiends, and Hunts, some kind of mass like that. You can try to attack one single base with all 4 armies and then pull back, attack another base, pull back, or you can split off and have 1 or 2 players attack one base, 1 or 2 players attack another base. You can go for, you can find the weakest base and have a Blade Master go in there and do his thing. All these different strategies, are going to be sort of the effectiveness is going to be jumped up generally when there's only one player on the other team. Now, it's totally possible that I could have been worse off if some of the allies had stayed. It really depends on how good they are. But if they are sort of as an average level of competence, generally I want them to stay, especially if all of them are at a general sort of the average level, because it's one thing microing and macroing 2 bases, and then it gets progressively harder. Like a 3rd base, is even harder still, and 4 bases that weren't set up at all from the get-go, that are different races. Human especially is sort of weird. They don't their farms aren't 10 food, and this and that. So it's like really, if it was like 2 elves and 2 undead, that might be a little easier. I could just mass fiends and hunts, and I go from there. But anyway, the point is, is it's difficult, and the weakness is, like I say, the ability to be sort of paying attention to multiple things at one time. Is harder than it is when you have allies who can say, oh, if their base is under attack, they're going to be there, they're going to notice, they're going to get the notification, they're going to be more likely to see it, since it's one of the few things that they should be paying attention to, or one of the major things that they should be paying attention to and in the game. And yeah, just as far as teching, as far as micro goes, I can micro in general better than most Force players seem to, or I do micro in general more than most Force players seem to, as far as I know, or the games that I've played. But even if I have 200 APM, which is a stretch for me, I generally, over the course of a full game, generally not going to hit 200 APM. But if you have three other players, to get to 200 APM, they only need like 70, 60, 60, what is it, 67 to really get there. So You know, that's pretty low. So, you know, if 3 players have 67 APM and I've got 200, you know, those 3 players are technically doing more than me in terms of clicking, at least. You know, whether or not it's good micro is another question, but you know, uh, it's a pretty low bar how much they have to do to sort of, uh, you know, to sort of contribute as much as I'm contributing, at least in terms of clicking and actions and everything else, and attention. Obviously, you know, I've got two eyes, and I look around as fast as I can, but you know, I've got one screen, and I can see the armies, the bases, and everything on. So, you know, if there's two battles going on, dividing your attention between that is obviously going to make the micro suffer, and most likely is going to impact the macro as well, because you know you have to be sort of doing all at the same time, so to speak. So, you know, if I've got, you know, a few hundred gold, 1,000 gold, 2,000 gold, you know, and then we're in a battle or 2 battles where I'm having to go back and micro and look at, you know, one screen and then move and look at somewhere else, and then, you know, try to like remember, oh, I need to keep building units, oh, I need to tech, oh, I need these upgrades, da da da. It's like, it's just sort of overwhelming. So, you know, you need to sort of have a plan in mind if, you know, if that happens. You know, you look at your team race composition. You know, I saw 2 orcs, I saw an undead, and I saw a human. So, or I was the undead. So, you know, I was like, okay, I can get a bunch of melee units, I can get a bunch of melee heroes. Fiends, a pretty versatile, solid unit, I can get those. I can start getting riflemen. They're not going to get Vampiric Aura, but Riflemen, kind of like Fiends, pretty versatile. They'll have some anti-air. In the case of them massing air units, Piercing is decent against casters. I'll have that. Just having a mass ranged army is pretty useful. You know, melee units can sort of get in the way of the others. You know, you need positioning in terms of fighting towers. You know, you'd have to run in there and get hit by towers. So there's all these sort of things you need to take into account. You know, it's like, okay, are my bases vulnerable to Blade Master Harass? Are they going to do a Blade Master Harass? In this case, yes, they did. You know, what are the vulnerable points in my strategy? Burrows, going to be pretty easy to pick off. I didn't really defend them all that great, as far as, like, I could have got some watchtowers earlier and stuff like that. So, you know, these are all things you need to really sort of keep in mind. Scouting, you know, generally something is going to suffer, you know, if not multiple things when you're just one player. Like, a lot of times I will scout in games, but, you know, in this particular game, it just didn't, you know, I didn't find the time. And then with Undead, you know, I'm not going to send like a ghoul or an acolyte. I probably should have, arguably, but didn't do that. So didn't really have a good idea of what was the vulnerable base to attack. And I don't even think I'm not even sure I realized that Blue left the game when he did. So, you know, if I did know that, I might have tried to find Blue's base and gone for that. But anyway, that was, I thought that was a pretty interesting game. You know, a couple of changes or a couple of breaks for them, and it would have been an easy for them to win. Like, you know, if Red didn't lose, like, all those Griffins when I town portaled, that end game was going to be much harder, because he was probably going to really hammer Orange's main as well, maybe even potentially take Orange's economy out, at least for a bit. You know, and he could have kept me off, you know, from attacking or from being aggressive, so that the Orc expansion on their team could have stayed up longer, could have allowed Yellow to get more Frostworms. And again, you know, they could find themselves in a situation where, you know, my army's sort of in disarray, the positioning's bad, what have you. You know, they catch a lucky hero kill here or there. You know, they focus on the heroes when I'm sort of distracted. You know, kill 1 or 2 heroes, that's half my heroes. So now I don't have the ability to, you know, I'm not leveling up with those heroes. I didn't even have TPs for like the last half of this game, so sort of stuck in that respect. Um, and again, getting 4 town portals, it's a lot of resources, and buying items, another messed up part of the game mechanics. You have to buy items with your actual gold count. It doesn't, like in StarCraft, I believe if players leave, it pulls their resources with yours all together, so you don't have to like try to keep track of who's got enough wood, who's got enough minerals or gold in this case. Uh, and so that's one less thing you have to like try to keep track of in your head, pay attention to. Whereas in this game, all the resource counts are spread. Uh, they're kept separate even when the players leave. So it's like, okay, I've got all this wood. This particular player doesn't have it. I've got to transfer some to him. But if it's the reverse, if one of the players that left has a bunch of gold, a bunch of wood, you can't transfer that to anybody else. That's just that player has that, and if you lose workers and a base of a player that has a ton of resources, those resources are just gone. Like there's nothing you can do to get them back if that player's left. You're just out all his resources, which again, sometimes when a player's there and he loses his base, sometimes players will leave with tons of resources, and that's just poor team play. But there's nothing you can do if they have left, and you lose their base. So you really have to try not to lose a base. And in general, that's not really a shocking thing, because in general you don't want to lose a player's base, because you lose it's 100 potential food that you've lost. That's a whole economy. That's a whole tech tree potentially. So yeah, you try not to lose bases, try not to lose economies, and try to keep building so you don't just lose just based on numbers alone. And that's really the only thing that gives you a real slight chance to win these type of games if you're good enough. Again, it takes a decent understanding of the game, of the timings, and a lot of effort. It's really just, you have to really want it to even have a chance here, because it's just such a massive amount more effort required. And I know you look at the APM or whatever, it's like, oh, you had the same APM you generally have, but it's like, yeah, you have that much APM, that many actions, and that much attention, but you have to divide that between 4 bases, between 4 armies, between 4 heroes, and things that otherwise wouldn't be a problem, they can become a problem just because you're limited. So anyway, that was one example of a crazy. A lot of players won't even try to do this just because they think it's a waste of time. And, maybe it is, because your chances of winning are generally, in general, they're going to be drastically reduced if more than one player leaves a game. If all 3 of your allies leave a game, your chances of winning, even if you're like well knowledgeable on the game, skilled, pretty high APM, or at least reasonably high compared to other Forest players, you can still lose. You're still most likely going to lose generally, because like I said, all the enemy has to do. There's 4 players on the other team, and even if let's say my sort of APM range is, even at the sort of best case scenario over a full game, is probably gonna max out around like 150, 160. That you could say, well, I don't do a lot of spamming, but I don't have the greatest micro and macro in the world, so obviously, let's just say 160, and all they need is 4 players is 40 APM to hit that number. And now again, 40 APM, that's really pretty bad. Let's just say they have like 50 or 60 APM, then that's going to be more actions than me, and obviously they have more attention to go around. They got 8 eyes instead of my 2 eyes. They've got 8 screens instead of my 1 screen, you know, that I can look at the game on. So that's just, it's just the way it is. I mean, you know, it shouldn't be shocking that, you know, your odds of winning a 1v4 or even a 1v3 is just like so tiny that you might just be like, well, I don't. It's just gonna be too much effort for not very much payoff in the rare chance. I mean, when you do win a 1v4 or a 1v3, it's pretty satisfying. So that's really one of the reasons. Just sort of challenge yourself. It's really just sort of a challenge to yourself, and you have a slight chance to be really satisfied. That it's like, oh man, I managed to, you know, beat all these players by myself. It's kind of like just kind of funny, but uh, but yeah. So that's the big thing. You know, it's really just if you want to challenge yourself to this, you know, it's kind of like playing a computer on the hardest mode in chess or something like that. You know, yeah, you could be a pretty good, decent, average chess player, but you know, the computers have progressed to a point where like even they can. And again, this is like sort of an extreme case, but they can even compete at like the highest levels against like the human chess champions. You know, in like a time game situation. So you know, it's like how rewarding is that? Well, you know, to some people, it's, you know, it can be rewarding. It's like, yeah, I put all this effort in. You know, I studied, you know, these chess openings and da da da. It's like, you know, what do I really get? You know, to sit here and win like maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 1v4 games I end up getting into. It's like, yeah, you know that, as far as frustration to enjoyment, obviously it's probably going to be more frustration just because you're rarely going to win those games. But on the off chance that you do win and those rare moments, it's pretty enjoyable. And again, this red player at the end of this game was actually pretty well mannered about it. He was like, yeah, good game, man. You know, we could have won if we would have, you know, sort of did better on the hit and runs and stuff. But then he was pretty much right. He had the right idea. His execution wasn't perfect either, but he had a pretty good idea there. And that's really, you know, one of the things you have to be prepared for. And I wasn't really all that prepared for it, but he sort of made a mistake to let me get back into it. So anyway, this is going to be ScryMind signing out, and I'll go ahead and give you one last listen to Jake's, or one more listen to Jake's Daddy's Home guitar riff to send it out.